it's been all about that, the what are you going to give the person? What gift are you going to give them? What experience are you going to give them? And don't get me wrong, those are definitely important. I just think we need to start with what feeling do we want? How do we want someone to feel after you've recognized them? Is it going to make them genuinely feel valued? Is it going to make them feel noticed? You hired me based off of this branding, and you don't treat me like this, and they're going to leave. So there has to be this connection. The puzzle pieces absolutely have to fit.
Hello everyone, you're listening to The Recruiting Revolution. Today, we are joined by Debra Corey from the United Kingdom. Debra brings 30 years of experience into HR with senior level roles at Fortune 500 companies including Gap, IQVIA, and Honeywell. In 2019, Debra founded her own company as Chief Paid Forward Officer, where she's inspiring and helping others to bring out their inner rebel and drive business change. Debra is an award-winning HR consultant, world-class speaker, thought leader, and 5-time best-selling author with prestigious recognition as the top 101 global employee engagement influencer. Welcome, Debra, and thank you for joining us on the podcast. So before we dive in, please tell us about your amazing journey.
I'll consolidate it a bit so it doesn't take the entire time to do that. So first of all, you can probably tell from my accent that I am American. So I started out my career as a traditional HR person back in the US. That was probably the first part of my career, taking on, working my way up the career ladder in different types of HR roles. And then I moved more to a global role. And that's when I moved over to the UK and took on responsibility for lots of different countries and different industries and different types of people. And I absolutely loved global role. And then my third part of my career is, I call it my pay it forward part of my career, which you can tell from my job title of Chief Pay It Forward Officer, which I love. I get to be a rebel. I get to be a consultant. I get to really go out there and help people, sharing what I've learned, good and bad, and through my books and my talks and my consulting. So I guess that's my journey in about a minute.
Fantastic. Now, that you mentioned, would love to hear on your current show, and what was the origin of the title, Chief Paid Forward Officer? Yeah.
I used to joke in my most recent corporate role, my CEO had me out all the time. I was out helping the clients. I was doing talks and everything. And I said, I think you need to start calling me Chief Pay It Forward Officer, because that's what you're doing. You're having me pay it forward all the time. And he just laughed at me. Company, that's what I would call myself. And I've gotten some interesting reactions to it. Some people have no idea what that means. Other people love it. I've had people say they want to call themselves the same thing. So yeah, that's where the origin came. And the good thing about it is, I think a job title should give you that focus and that direction. And, like when you asked me to join this podcast, I thought, okay, I'm about paying it forward. I need to say yes to you. And that was one of the main reasons I thought I'd jump on this call.
That is amazing. I'm also curious to know, having an extensive background in corporate leadership and HR, spending over 2-3 decades, as we previously mentioned. So what motivated you to depart from that path and, establish your own venture?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm not a very brave person. I've been in a corporate role most of my career. I've had the comfort and the protection of a corporate role. So it was a bit scary for me. It wasn't like I always thought that I wanted to start my own business. But in my last role, I sort of had one leg in corporate and one leg out, because as I mentioned, my CEO was having me go around and do consulting and do speaking and such. And when it was time to leave the company, I thought, I really love doing that. And as much as I love doing corporate, I think if I really genuinely want to pay it forward, which is what I was committed to, it probably would be better for me to do that on my own. So it was a very bold step, brave step. Again, for me, some people it comes natural. I've learned so many things along the way, things I've done well, again, things I've done wrong. I jump on the call with entrepreneurs all the time and share, these are my 3 biggest mistakes I made type thing. But yeah, it was sort of a natural transition. And then I just jumped off the deep end and did it. Luckily, I did it the year before COVID. I think if I had done it in the middle of COVID, I probably would have gone back to corporate, but I had already had a year out there being able to do it. So that's why I continued with it.
And like, what is your experience? Like how that, the corporate life differs from being an entrepreneur. So what's the transition like?
It's learning a whole new way of doing work, I have to say, because being in corporate, the work would come to me. I always had the safety net of, you can come up with your own projects and your own ways of doing it, but you don't have to necessarily sell yourself all the time. So I find that I have to be a design person. I design my own website. I have to be a marketing person, a finance person. I do my own expenses. So it's given me a whole new depth and breadth of all the different jobs and appreciation of what people do. I think if I ever went back to corporate, I would go up to those people who design websites and say, I completely respect you more than I ever did before.
Yeah, that is true. That is so fantastic. Also, now that we're talking about the corporate life that you were in, so, take us back to the times when, you were working as a corporate HR. So you must have seen a lot of, how has the significance of employee engagement and employee experience, and also happiness of work evolved over these years that you went into corporate?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. As a matter of fact, the second book that I wrote, it's called Build It, the Rebel Playbook. What we do is we look at all the different aspects of an employee experience and we look at where it needs to go, because I think that some people, unfortunately, are too rooted to the past. So, when I go out and I talk to people and I do consulting, sometimes people are doing things that, I don't know, I used to do 20 years ago. Perfect example. I spoke to someone the other day and they have a 1-year waiting period before an employee can be a part of some of their different benefit programs. We used to do that 20 years ago when somebody would be at a job for life. But now it's like, why are you making someone wait a year? Especially because these happen to be things that impact your well-being. And, with all the challenges around well-being and mental health and physical health, it's like, challenging people to think differently and understand that actually the world is a very, very different place than it was before. And I think to some extent, the pandemic forced us to do that. So I think, we're moving forward, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done into moving into, a more meaningful, a more effective, a more rebellious approach to employee engagement.
Okay. And it also, how do you, what will you, tell about, how is employee experience in relation with employees recognition? So how is that correlated with each other?
Employee engagement, employee recognition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And employee experience, yeah.
And the experience, yeah. I mean, for me, they're all interrelated. So when I think about the employee experience, all the different touch points, they all work together. So, my most recent book that I wrote was on recognition. So you mentioned recognition. And to me, recognition touches the different aspects of the employee experience. So if you think about the first touch point of the employee experience is when you get a job, the hiring process. So what do you do to recognize people throughout the hiring process? What do you do to make them feel that you did a great job when you were going through the interview process, or congratulations, you have the new job, or once you join the company, fantastic for making it through the, first couple of months, and fantastic for, getting this amazing performance appraisal. So to me, recognition has to be woven into the entire employee experience. It's absolutely critical. I mean, recognition is showing someone that you care and you appreciate them. So, I always say, why hold back? Why would you not want to make someone feel appreciated?
Yeah. Yep. About the recognition that you talk about in your book, which is Appreciated, the Playbook for Employee Appreciation. So, you emphasize that, recognition goes beyond material rewards, like fancy trophies or expensive gifts, but rather acknowledging the feelings. So could you provide insights on why recognition and cultivating a culture of appreciation are, particularly crucial in 2023 and beyond, of course?
Yeah, and it goes back to, me being a bit of a rebel and challenging what people do, because if I think about how in the past we've designed recognition programs, it's been all about that the what are you going to give the person? What gift are you going to give them? What experience are you going to give them? And don't get me wrong, those are definitely important. I just think we need to start with what feeling do we want? How do we want someone to feel after you recognize them? Is it going to make them genuinely feel valued? Is it going to make them feel noticed? Or is it going to be like, well, why did someone just give me this plaque? Or, why did someone send me a bottle of wine when they know that I don't drink alcohol type thing? So I think if we start with the feeling and start by understanding the people, so what will work for them, and also what they've done. If you do something really, really big, it's a different feeling than if you do something, really, really small. So yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change that focus on the feeling. And it's interesting. I love quotes. So in my book, I've got lots of quotes, and I wanted a really powerful quote at the beginning of the book. And I had one that I wanted to use, but I've used it before because it's one of my favorites, but I went back and put it in, and you've probably heard it before. It's from Maya Angelou, which is, people forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I put it at the beginning of my book because I think, again, that's where we need to start with this feeling.
That is so true. Also, like as a small team, like maybe like as a recruiting, we are a 15 people team. So how can we can build a culture in a smaller team rather than, like a big MNC? How can we, build a culture here?
I think for me, it always starts by explaining the why. And I go into companies all the time and do talks with the people and the managers and everything. And it's bringing people together and talking about it and understanding why is it important, and everybody explain it from their own perspective. So like, why do you think it's important? I think it's important because, it gives me feedback. So by you recognizing me, it makes me realize actually what I'm doing is really important. Or for someone else, it might be, do you know what? I work remotely all the time. Every time you recognize me, it makes me feel that I'm noticed. So if everybody can talk about the why do they need it, and then what works for you, then whether you have, 15 people, 15,000 people, 150,000 people, you can come up with something that works for you. And, one of the reasons in my book that I have so many stories and examples is just to show there's no one right or wrong way to do it. One small company I interviewed, they have like a little spinny thing where when someone gets recognized, they get to spin the recognition wheel, and they don't have any money. So it's all just silly little things. Like someone will make tea and coffee for you or something. And they all love the idea. So that's what they do. Where another company I interviewed, they've got this formal platform, and they've got points, and they've got money. So lots of different ways. So it all starts with understanding why it's important to your people and what will work for them, and doing it in your own way. I love creativity when it comes to recognition.
Yeah, that is so true. Also like after the COVID, we have seen that, the productivity has increased a lot, like in terms of, the work, everything has increased in terms of productivity. But what will you tell about the employee engagement in this COVID situation after the COVID? Because of the hybrid and remote work, has it increased or has it seen a downfall?
There's so many different studies that talk about this, and it depends what you're looking for. You can find one study that says that it's increased. You can find another study that says it's decreased. And that's why I go back to what I mentioned about, design your recognition for you. I think it depends on the company. I think it depends on what the company has done to help their people be effective. So I know some companies that have remote workers, and they've changed their whole processes, not just technology. They haven't just, put Zoom in, or they've put in some type of information sharing, but they've changed the way that they work. And in those companies, people are so much more productive. Other companies, who are just, they put on Zoom and think that it's going to magically, work. It's not productive because we've got extra hurdles and things like that. So I think it genuinely depends. I'm a firm believer that I think that this is the new world. I know people who they will only work remotely, or I know other people who want hybrid, and I know other people who want to be in the office all the time. So you need to build something that's going to work for the work that you have to do, and then the job and the person.
Got it. Got it. That's fantastic. Also, like when we talk about employee experience and employee engagement, do you think it's interrelated with employer branding? Like how, like in what ways can employee experience influence employer branding?
It's interesting. I'm working with a client right now on our EVP, the employee value proposition. And it's the other way around. So the employee value proposition is going to drive the employee experience. So the words that we're going to end up with, I can't tell you because we're not finished yet. The words that we're going to come up with, we actually have a meeting next week where we're going to weave it into every aspect of the employee experience. So how do these words drive the recruitment process? How do they drive the onboarding process? How do they drive recognition? So I absolutely, and if you do it right, the EVP, the employer brand, the values and behaviors, they all have to drive the employee experience. If not, it's like when you try to get a puzzle piece to fit. It just doesn't work, and your employees are going to get it. They're going to be like, you hired me based off of this branding, and you don't treat me like this, and they're going to leave. So there has to be this connection. The puzzle pieces absolutely have to fit.
And that is so true. When I talk about the the ever changing world of human resources, like what key takeaways would you like to share with our audience, especially aspiring HR leaders?
Every time I do a talk, and I do a talk about, being a rebel, I always end with a couple of challenges for people. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I guess the first one is to be curious and to ask why. So if you think about when you're a child in school and you're like raising your hand and you're saying, why is the sky blue? Or why this, why that? I think that as HR professionals, we need to do that. We need to be more curious. We need to question. We need to challenge and start with that concept of why are we doing it? Why are we doing it for the business? Why are we doing it for the people? So that's my first challenge. Linked to it is to link it to strategy. Everything that we do in HR needs to be linked in strategy. And if I think back, when I started, it wasn't. We sat in our little HR bubble. We didn't necessarily understand what the business was doing, what the business drivers were doing. And going back to that puzzle, it doesn't just link, the puzzle pieces just don't fit with your branding and your values, also your business strategy. So if the business is having a certain challenge, you need to support them through what you're doing in HR. Next one goes back to what I said, do it your own way. On one hand, I love when people tell me that they love the stories that I share, and they're like, I love that, I'm going to go back and do that. It's like, no, that's not why I share stories. I share stories so that you get inspired, and then you go back and do it, your own way. Perfect example, I shared a story about a company who does called a paternity leave. So they're obsessed with dogs. It was founded by two men and a dog. And they did a paternity leave. And I went back and my employees said, we want that. And then when I spoke to employees, we've got people who have cats, we've got people who have horses, we've got people who have dogs. It's like, it's not going to work. So yeah, do it in your own way. And I guess the last one is to be nimble. Again, if I think back to what I used to do, we used to put in place strategies for, 3 years, 5 years, programs that were in place for 3 or 5 years. Now, when I go to employees, I say, do you know what? I'm going to put this in. I'm going to look at it again in the next 6 months. We might continue it. We might not continue it. And I think that we all got very nimble during the pandemic. So that's a trait that we learned, and we need to continue to be nimble because the world is going to continue to change around us, and we need to be flexible and be able to adapt to it.
That is fantastic. As a final question, you love writing books. So, when can the audience, expect your next book? Is it like something you're writing, or is it work in progress?
It's so funny because I actually just started writing it. I wrote 2 books last year. So I told myself I was not going to write a book this year. But I've been wanting to write this book since I wrote my second book. In my second book, I had a phrase called "Bad Bosses Ruin Lives." And everyone loved that phrase and they loved the concept. So that is going to be my next book on bad bosses ruin lives. And I'm going to be talking about the different types of bad bosses. And funnily enough, I was just writing a story about when I was a bad boss and how I had done something wrong. So I'm very honest in my book, and I talk about when I do things well, but also when I thoroughly mess up. So I was actually just laughing because I was writing that story right before our call.
So coming from an experience, this book will be amazing, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. So stay tuned on social media because I'm going to be asking people for their best bad bosses ruin lives stories. I'm not going to use names because I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But yeah, I'm sure we all have examples. And I think the more examples, first of all, it'll make us feel better because we know we're not the only one.
Yeah.
But also as bosses, I think the more we can read these and hear about them, the more we realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was bad. I guess I shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And in every country, there's the same experience. I feel everyone will connect with your book. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the thing I say, I really need to, at the beginning, I haven't written the introduction yet, but I want to start it out saying I'm not pointing fingers. You know, we don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a bad boss. I'm going to ruin someone's life. Most people, it's not intentional. So when I messed up, and I've got a story about how at one company, they used to have the Debra Corey support group and once a week get together and cry because I used to make them cry all the time because I was managing it as an American, not understanding that you don't manage that way in the UK. So it's like we all make mistakes and okay, let's just get over it and figure out what to do so that we're not a bad boss. So yeah, hopefully it'll help more people again paying it forward.
That is amazing. Debra, that concludes our side. Thank you for addressing all these questions, and it has been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debra.